Welcome to my channel Deep Sleep Mission-DSM. As we begin, I would be delighted if you could share your location in the comments below. It's truly inspiring to witness how far this content travels and to connect with viewers from across the world. The Bunnyman Bridge, where no one goes alone. The thing about small-town legends is that they're usually garbage. Complete nonsense made up by bored teenagers with nothing better to do on Friday nights. At least, that's what I kept telling myself as I sat in my car, engine idling, headlights cutting through the October fog that rolled across the old railroad bridge ahead of me. My phone buzzed. Another text from Jake. "You chickening out already, Sarah? Haven't even gotten out of the car yet." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. 27 years old, and here I was, about to walk across some stupid bridge at midnight because of a dare. Because Jake and the others at the brewery where I worked had been going on and on about the Bunnyman Bridge for weeks now. How nobody goes there alone. How the last person who tried, well, they found her car, but not her. But that was just talk. Had to be. The bridge loomed in front of me, maybe 100 feet long, abandoned railroad tracks running across it. Clifton, Virginia isn't exactly known for much, but this bridge had stories, and not the fun kind you tell around campfires. I turned off the engine. The sudden silence hit me like a physical thing. "All right," I whispered to myself. "Just walk across, take a selfie on the other side as proof, and get out. 5 minutes, that's all." And now, let the story begin. The fog was thicker than it looked from inside the car. It wrapped around me the moment I stepped out, cold and damp against my skin. My footsteps on the gravel seemed too loud in the quiet. No crickets, no owls, just nothing. I pulled out my phone, started recording a video. "Okay, Jake, you absolute jerk. I'm here at your precious Bunnyman Bridge. I checked the time. 11:58 p.m. on October 23rd, and I'm about to walk across this thing alone because apparently I can't back down from a stupid dare." The bridge stretched ahead of me, wooden railroad ties dark with age and moisture. On either side, chain-link fencing rose up about 8 feet high, topped with barbed wire. To keep people from jumping, I guessed. Or to keep something in. No. Stop that. I took my first step onto the bridge. The wood creaked under my weight, and I could hear the sound echo underneath. How far was the drop? 30 feet? 40? The fog made it impossible to tell. "So, for anyone watching this later," I continued, trying to keep my voice steady, "the legend goes like this. Back in 1904, there was an asylum transport that crashed near here. Bunch of patients escaped. They caught all but one. Douglas Griffin. Guy had been locked up for..." I paused. The wind picked up, whistling through the chain link. "For killing his family. On Easter Sunday. Dressed in a bunny costume." Another step. Another creak. "They started finding dead rabbits hanging from this bridge. Hundreds of them. Then they found Marcus Walster, teenager, hanging right about..." I lifted my phone, panning the camera across the bridge. "Right about where I'm standing now." My foot caught on something. I looked down. Just a loose railroad spike. Nothing more. "They never caught Griffin. Some say he lived in the woods around here for years. Some say he never left at all. That he's still here, waiting for people dumb enough to cross his bridge alone at night." I was maybe a quarter of the way across now. The fog seemed thicker here, pressing in from all sides. My phone's flashlight barely penetrated more than a few feet ahead. Then I heard it. A sound. Soft. Rhythmic. Like breathing? No. More like whispers? I stopped walking. Held my breath. Listened. Nothing. Just the wind. "Getting jumpy already, Sarah?" I muttered to myself, forcing a laugh for the camera. "This is exactly what Jake wants.
me freaking out over every little thump. Something hit the fence to my right, hard. The chain link rattled, vibrating along its entire length. I spun toward the sound, phone light shaking in my trembling hand. Nothing there, just fog and fence and darkness beyond. Okay, that was probably just a bird or a bat. Do bats fly in fog? Whatever. I kept walking. Faster now. The wooden ties seemed to go on forever, each one identical to the last. How long was this bridge? It hadn't looked this long from my car. My phone buzzed, a text. But when I looked at the screen, it was just gibberish. Random symbols and letters that made no sense. Then another text, more gibberish. Then another. What the hell? The texts kept coming. Dozens of them. My phone vibrating constantly in my hand. The screen flickered. The flashlight dimmed. No. Don't you dare die on me now. The light went out completely. Darkness swallowed me whole. I stood there, heart hammering against my ribs, trying to get the flashlight to work. Nothing. The screen wouldn't even turn on. That's when I heard the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from behind me. Wooden ties creaking under someone's weight. Someone, or something. I couldn't move. Every muscle in my body locked up as those footsteps got closer. Creak, pause, creak, pause. Like whoever it was knew exactly how scared I was and wanted to draw it out. My phone suddenly blazed back to life, the flashlight hitting my eyes with blinding intensity. I squinted, blinking away tears, and spun around. Nothing. Empty bridge stretching back into the fog. But the footsteps. I'd heard them. I knew I'd heard them. Hello? My voice came out as barely a whisper. I cleared my throat, tried again. Is someone there? This isn't funny. Silence. I turned back around to keep walking and nearly screamed. There was something hanging from the fence about 20 feet ahead, swaying slightly in the wind. I approached slowly, phone held out in front of me like a weapon. It was a rabbit. Dead. Hanging by its hind legs from a piece of wire twisted through the chain link. Fresh, too. Blood still dripping from where its throat had been. I backed away, bile rising in my throat. This was wrong. This was so wrong. Someone had put that there. Someone who knew I was coming. Someone who... The footsteps started again. Closer this time, right behind me. I ran. I didn't care about the dare anymore, didn't care about Jake's stupid jokes or proving anything to anyone. I just ran, feet pounding on the railroad ties, phone light bouncing crazily ahead of me. More rabbits. They were everywhere now. Hanging from the fence on both sides. Dozens of them. Fresh kills, all of them. Blood still warm, still dripping, painting the old wood dark and slick. How? How was this possible? I could see the end of the bridge through the fog. Just another 50 feet. 40. 30. Something grabbed my ankle. I went down hard, phone flying from my hand, skittering across the wooden ties. My chin hit the wood, teeth clicking together, taste of copper filling my mouth. I rolled over, kicking at whatever had grabbed me. It was a hand, pale, thin fingers wrapped around my ankle, coming up through a gap in the railroad ties. From underneath the bridge. I screamed then, really screamed, kicked harder. The fingers released, disappearing back down through the gap. I scrambled for my phone, grabbed it, and ran the last 20 feet to solid ground. Only when I was off the bridge, feet on blessed asphalt, did I turn back to look. A figure stood in the middle of the bridge, tall, thin, just a silhouette in the fog, but I could make out ears? Long, pointed ears. Like, the figure raised one hand, waved, slow and deliberate. Then it walked backward, never turning around, until the fog swallowed it whole. I ran to my car, fumbled with the keys, got inside, and locked the doors. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get the key in the ignition. As I drove away, tires squealing, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The bridge was lit up. Every few feet along its length, small fires burned, and in that flickering light, I could see them. Hundreds of dead rabbits hanging like Christmas decorations. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the text message waiting on my phone when I finally stopped shaking enough to look at it. From an unknown number. "You weren't alone. You're never alone. See you next Easter, Sarah." I didn't sleep that night, or the next. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that figure on the bridge, those long ears, that wave. I called in sick to work, ignored Jake's texts asking how the dare went. What was I supposed to tell him? That the bunny man was real? That I'd nearly been grabbed by something hiding under the bridge? On the third day, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know if what I'd seen was real or if I'd just, I don't know, had some kind of breakdown out there. I drove back to the bridge in broad daylight, parked in the same spot, walked to the entrance. The bridge looked different in the sunlight, smaller, less threatening. Just an old railroad bridge with rusted fencing and weathered wood. No dead rabbits, no blood, nothing. I walked across it, examining every inch. The wooden ties were solid, no gaps big enough for a hand to reach through. The chain-link fence was intact, no wires twisted through it. It was like nothing had happened at all. "You looking for something?" I jumped, spun around. An older man stood at the entrance to the bridge wearing a Parks Department uniform. I was here a few nights ago," I said. "I thought I saw..." He nodded like he knew exactly what I was going to say. "Let me guess. Dead rabbits? Tall figure with long ears?" My blood ran cold. "You've heard about this before?" "Every October," he said, walking onto the bridge. "Like clockwork. Someone comes here alone at night, sees things. Sometimes they report it. Usually they don't." "So it's, what, a prank? Someone messing with people?" He was quiet for a moment, looking out over the side of the bridge. "You know the real story? Not the legend everyone tells, but what actually happened?" I shook my head. "No asylum, no escaped patient, but there was a Douglas Griffin. Lived right over there." He pointed through the trees. "Back in 1904. Had a daughter, Sarah, just like you." My skin prickled. That's just a coincidence." "Maybe. Anyway, his daughter went missing, Easter Sunday. He spent weeks searching for her. The whole town helped. Finally found her." He tapped his foot on the wooden ties. "Right here, under the bridge. She'd been, well, wasn't pretty." "Someone killed her?" "Never found out who. Douglas. He lost his mind. Started leaving dead rabbits around town. Said they were messages, clues to who killed his girl. The townspeople got scared. Formed a mob. Chased him to this bridge." The old man pulled out a cigarette, lit it with shaking hands. "They hung him right here. But before he died, he said something. Said he'd wait. Wait for her killer to come back. Wait forever if he had to." "That's..." I struggled to find words. "That's horrible, but it doesn't explain what I saw." The man looked at me then. Really looked at me. His eyes were strange. Too bright. Too knowing. "Doesn't it?" he asked. "Sarah?" I backed away. "How did you... I never told you my name." He smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "Oh, I know all the Sarahs. Every single one who comes to this bridge. Alone. At night. Just like his daughter did." "You're crazy." I turned to leave, but he grabbed my arm. His grip was impossibly strong. "Am I?" "Check your phone, Sarah. Check the pictures you took that night." I yanked my arm free, ran to my car. But once inside, doors locked, I did check my phone. scrolled through to the video I had recorded. My heart stopped. In the video, I wasn't alone on the bridge. In every frame, just behind me, was a figure. Tall, thin, getting closer with each step I took. And its face was human. Mostly, but wrong. Eyes too large, mouth too wide, and those ears. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat, started the car. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. Because in the last frame of the video, just before my phone had died, the figure was holding something. A photograph, old and yellowed, of a young girl who looked exactly like me. I didn't go home. Couldn't. Instead, I drove to the Clifton Library. If there was any truth to what that old man had said, there would be records, newspaper clippings, something. The librarian, a woman who looked like she'd been there since the building opened, didn't even blink when I asked about Douglas Griffin and the Bunnyman Bridge. "Third person this month," she muttered, leading me to a back room. "All the October people want to know about him." She pulled out a box of old newspapers, photographs, documents. "Help yourself. Just put everything back when you're done." I spent hours going through it all. And piece by piece, a different story emerged. Douglas Griffin was real. His daughter Sarah was real. But the similarities to the legend ended there. The newspapers from 1904 told of a tragedy, yes, but not the one I'd expected. Sarah Griffin hadn't been murdered. She'd died in an accident, fell from the bridge while playing with friends. A stupid dare from other kids to walk across the old railroad tracks. Douglas had blamed himself. Left notes around town, yes, but they weren't threats. They were apologies. Rambling letters about how he should have watched her better, should have told her not to go to the bridge. And the rabbits? He'd raised them. It was his hobby, his pride. After Sarah died, he'd stopped caring for them. Let them go. Some were found dead around town, but from neglect, not violence. The mob? That was real, too. But they hadn't hung Douglas Griffin. He'd hung himself. From the bridge. On Easter Sunday, exactly 1 year after his daughter's death. I sat back, staring at a photograph of Douglas and Sarah. They looked happy. Normal. Nothing like the monster from the legend. So what had I seen on the bridge? Finding what you're looking for? I looked up. The librarian stood in the doorway, but something was different about her. In the dim light of the back room, her shadow seemed wrong, too tall. And were those... "You know," she continued, stepping into the room, "the interesting thing about that story is what happened after. All the deaths, I mean." "Deaths?" She smiled. "Oh, yes. Every few years, someone goes missing near that bridge. Usually young women, usually named Sarah. Funny how patterns repeat, isn't it?" I stood up, papers scattering. "I should go." "Should you? But you haven't heard the best part." She moved closer. The fluorescent light above us flickered. "They say Douglas still waits on that bridge. Not for his daughter's killer. There never was one. He waits for his daughter, calls to her, and sometimes..." The lights went out completely. "Sometimes she comes." In the darkness, I heard it. That same rhythmic whisper from the bridge. But now I could make out words. "Sarah, Sarah, come back to me." I ran, crashed through the dark library, knocked over chairs, hit my hip on a table. Behind me, that voice grew louder. "Sarah, why did you leave me? Sarah!" I burst out of the library into the afternoon sun. My car was right there, 20 feet away. I could make it. A hand fell on my shoulder. I screamed, spun around. It was Jake. Jake from work, looking concerned and confused. "Sarah? Jesus, are you okay? I've been trying to call you for days. We were worried when you didn't show up for work." I couldn't speak. Just stood there, gasping, looking back at the library. Through the window I could see the librarian at her desk, stamping books like nothing had happened. "Come on," Jake said. Let me buy you a coffee. You look like you need it. At the coffee shop, I told Jake everything, expected him to laugh, to tell me I was crazy. Instead, his face went pale. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something. About the dare." "What about it?" It wasn't our idea. This guy came into the brewery about a week before. Older guy. Said he knew you'd be perfect for it. Said your name was Sarah and everything. Gave us $50 each to dare you to go to that bridge. My coffee cup rattled against the saucer as I set it down. What did he look like? Thin, pale, wore this old Parks Department uniform. And his eyes? Too bright, I finished. Too knowing. Jake nodded. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. We thought it was just some Halloween prank thing. We didn't know." I wasn't listening anymore. Because outside the coffee shop window, across the street, someone was watching us. Tall, thin, wearing a Parks Department uniform. He smiled, waved. That same slow, deliberate wave. Then he turned and walked away. And I swear I saw long ears silhouetted against the setting sun. That was a week ago. I've moved since then. Different town, different state. Changed my phone number. Even went by my middle name instead of Sarah. But it doesn't matter. Every night I dream of the bridge. Every shadow seems too tall. Every whisper sounds like my name. And last night I found something under my pillow. A photograph. Old and yellowed, of a young girl who looks exactly like me, standing on a bridge, smiling at the camera. On the back, in spidery handwriting, "Found you." The date written below it? Easter Sunday, 6 months from now. I know I should run, keep running, but part of me wonders, what's the point? He found me once. He'll find me again. Maybe that's what he wants. Not revenge, not violence, just reunion. A father calling for his daughter across a century of grief and madness. Or maybe I'm losing my mind, just like Douglas Griffin did. Either way, I know where I'll be on Easter Sunday. The Bunny Man Bridge, where no one goes alone. But I won't be alone, will I? I never was. So tell me, have you ever noticed how many missing person cases happen near old bridges? How many of them are young women? How many of them are named Sarah? Look it up. Check your local papers. I bet you'll find at least one. And if your name is Sarah, if you ever get dared to visit a bridge alone at night, don't. Just don't. He's waiting. He's always waiting. And once he finds you, well, let's just say I'll see you on Easter Sunday, whether you want to or not. Sweet dreams. Story number 2. I remember a life I never lived. The smell hit me first. Pine needles and vanilla candles, just like Mom used to burn every Christmas morning in our old house in Burlington, Vermont. Except Mom never lived in Vermont. We never had a house with pine trees, and she hated vanilla candles. But I remembered it. God help me. I remembered every detail of that Christmas morning in 1987. The snow falling outside the bay window, Dad's laugh echoing from the kitchen as he burned the pancakes again, my little sister Sarah unwrapping her Cabbage Patch doll. I don't have a sister. If you're listening to this right now, lying in bed, maybe with the lights off, I need you to do something for me. Check your photo albums, look at your old pictures. Make sure the faces you see are the ones you actually remember. Because 3 weeks ago, I discovered something that made me question everything I thought I knew about my life. And if it happened to me, it might be happening to you too. But wait, before I tell you what I found, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. And you might need someone to talk to when you realize you might be remembering things that never happened either. Now, let me tell you how my story begins. It started with spring cleaning. Nothing sinister about that, right? Just me, trying to declutter my apartment in Denver before my lease renewal. I'd been putting it off for months. You know how it is. Work at the insurance office had been brutal, and the last thing I wanted to do on weekends was sort through boxes of old junk. But there I was, on a Saturday afternoon in March, pulling dusty containers from the back of my closet. Most of it was exactly what you'd expect. College textbooks I'd never open again. Cables for devices I'd thrown away years ago. A birthday card from my ex-boyfriend. Straight into the trash with that one. Then I found it. A shoebox I didn't recognize. Duct tape wrapped around it like someone really didn't want it opened. The tape was yellowed with age, brittle. When I peeled it off, it crumbled between my fingers. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. The first one made me drop the box. It was me, but not me. The woman in the photo had my face, my exact face, but she was standing in front of a house I'd never seen, wearing clothes I'd never owned, holding hands with a man I'd never met, and in her other arm was a baby. My hands were shaking as I picked up the next photo. Same woman, same face, my face. But this time she was older, maybe 45 or 50, standing at what looked like a high school graduation. The teenager next to her was wearing a cap and gown, beaming at the camera. He had her eyes. My eyes. I spread all the photos across my bedroom floor. There must have been 50 of them. A whole life documented in fading Kodak prints. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family vacations to places I'd never been. The Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, some beach house in North Carolina. But it was the faces that made my skin crawl. They were familiar. Not in the way where you think you might have met someone once. Familiar like when you see your reflection in a mirror. Like when you know someone so well you can predict what they're going to say before they open their mouth. I knew these people. I knew that the man in the photos, David, his name was David, always wore his watch on his right wrist, even though he was right-handed. I knew the boy. Michael was allergic to strawberries and had broken his arm falling off his bike when he was 7. I knew the woman in the photos, me but not me, had a small scar on her left knee from tripping on the basement stairs, but I'd never met David. I didn't have a son named Michael, and I lived in a second-floor apartment. No basement, no stairs to trip on. I sat there for hours, just staring at those photos, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Maybe they were fake, some kind of weird art project, but no, they were real. The wear on the edges, the way the color had faded. These were genuine photographs from the 80s and 90s. That's when I noticed the writing on the back of one. Faded blue ink and handwriting I recognized as my own. Michael's first day of kindergarten, September 3rd, 1993. Can't believe my baby is growing up so fast. I was 15 years old in 1993. I was starting my sophomore year of high school in Portland. I didn't have a baby. I couldn't have written this, but I remembered writing it. I remembered standing in that kitchen, the one with the yellow walls and the rooster clock, penning those words while Michael ate his Cheerios. I remembered how he'd insisted on wearing his dinosaur shirt, even though it had a stain on it. I remembered kissing David goodbye as he left for work at the bank. No, that wasn't right. I grew up in Portland with my mom, just the two of us in a cramped apartment above the Chinese restaurant. Dad left when I was 3. There was no house with yellow walls, no David, no Michael. So why could I remember them? I must have sat there for another hour, maybe 2, before I heard it. Footsteps above me, slow, deliberate, like someone trying not to be heard. Here's the thing. I live on the top floor. The footsteps continued for several minutes, back and forth, like someone pacing. The ceiling creaked with each step, and I knew that sound. I knew exactly which floorboard was making that noise because I'd fixed it myself, in the house from the photos, the one with the yellow kitchen and the basement stairs. I'd gone up to the attic one Sunday afternoon with a hammer and some nails, because David was useless with tools and that squeaky board was driving me crazy. I pressed my palms against my eyes. No, that never happened. I lived in an apartment. There was no attic. There was nothing above me but the roof, and the footsteps stopped directly overhead. I held my breath, waiting. The silence stretched out, thick and heavy like humidity before a storm. Then I heard it. A voice, muffled by the ceiling but unmistakably familiar. "Honey? Is that you down there?" It was my voice, but older, tired, the way I imagined I'd sound in 20 years. "I've been waiting for you to find the photos," the voice continued. "I know this is confusing, but you need to listen very carefully. You're not crazy, and you're not alone." I should have run. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to get out of that apartment, call the police, call someone, anyone. But I didn't, because deep down, in some part of me I couldn't explain, I recognized that voice, not just as my own, but as someone I'd been missing without knowing I'd lost them. "Come up to the attic," the voice said. "I'll explain everything. The door is where it's always been." Where it's always been? There was no door, no attic. This was an apartment building, modern construction. The hallway outside my unit led to other apartments. Mrs. Chen in 4B, the college kids in 4C who played their music too loud. There was no... I turned around and there it was. A door that hadn't been there 5 minutes ago. Painted white with a brass knob gone green with age. Exactly like the attic door in the house from the photos. The house I'd never lived in but remembered perfectly. My hand was on the knob before I realized I'd moved. The metal was cold, real, solid in a way that dreams never are. I turned it slowly, and the door opened to reveal a narrow staircase leading up into darkness. The smell of pine and vanilla drifted down, stronger now, mixed with something else. Something that made my throat tight with an emotion I couldn't name. It smelled like home, like Sunday mornings and bedtime stories, like all the memories I'd never made but somehow carried anyway. "That's it," the voice encouraged. "Just like you used to do when Michael had nightmares. You remember, don't you? How you'd climb these stairs to check on him?" I did remember. I remembered the way the third step creaked. The way I'd skip it so I wouldn't wake David. I remembered the feel of the banister under my hand, worn smooth by years of use. My foot was on the first step before I could stop myself, then the second. The third creaked exactly like I knew it would, because I'd climbed these stairs 1,000 times, in a life I'd never lived. The attic was exactly as I remembered it, boxes labeled in my handwriting. Christmas decorations. Michael's baby clothes, wedding china, a rocking chair in the corner where I used to sit and read while the boys were at school and work, the small window that looked out over the backyard where we'd hung the tire swing, and standing in the middle of it all was me. She was maybe 20 years older, gray streaking through hair that had once been the same dark brown as mine, lines around eyes that were still my exact shade of green. She wore a sweater I recognized. Cable knit cream with a coffee stain on the sleeve that would never come out no matter how many times we washed it. "Hello, sweetie," she said, and her voice was warm and sad and so achingly familiar. "I've been waiting for you." I should have been terrified, should have screamed or run or something, but all I felt was relief, like finding something you didn't know you'd lost, like coming home after a long trip to discover someone had been keeping the lights on for you. "This isn't possible," I whispered. She smiled, and it was my smile, but softer somehow, worn down by years I hadn't lived. "Sit down. Let me tell you about the life you remember." I sat in the rocking chair, my rocking chair, while the other me settled onto an old trunk. She moved carefully, favoring her left hip. I knew without asking that it was from the car accident. The one where Michael had broken his collarbone. The one where we'd skidded on black ice coming home from his hockey game. "Stop," I said. "Just stop. This isn't real. You're not real. I'm having some kind of breakdown." "December 15th, 2001, she said quietly. "That was the accident. Michael was 13. He'd scored 2 goals that night. You were so proud you took him to that diner off Route 9 for pie. Apple for him. Cherry for you." My mouth went dry. I could taste that cherry pie. Could feel the vinyl booth sticking to my legs. Could hear Michael laughing as he recounted his winning goal for the 3rd time. "How?" I managed. "How do I remember things that never happened?" She leaned forward, and in the dim attic light, I could see tears in her eyes. "Because they did happen. Just not to you. Not exactly. That doesn't make sense." "I know." She reached into her pocket and pulled out another photograph. This one was newer, digital, printed on glossy paper. "Tell me what you see." I took it with trembling hands. It was a family portrait. Professional, the kind you get done at JCPenney with the fake autumn leaves background. There was older me in the center, David on her right, Michael on her left. They looked happy, complete. But there was something wrong with the photo. A space next to Michael where someone else should have been standing. An empty spot that made the composition feel off balance. "Sarah," I said without thinking. "Sarah should be there. She was 17 when this was taken. She just made varsity volleyball and she was so tall we had to..." I stopped. The memory was sharp and clear and absolutely impossible. Because I didn't have a daughter named Sarah. Because I didn't have any children at all. Because I was 35 and single and had never even been pregnant. "She was beautiful," older me said softly. "Looked just like you at that age. Same stubborn chin, same laugh. She wanted to be a marine biologist. Do you remember the summer she volunteered at the aquarium?" I did. God help me, I remembered every moment. Teaching her to drive in the high school parking lot, shopping for her prom dress, the fight we'd had when she wanted to pierce her nose, the way she'd held my hand in the hospital when David had his heart attack. "She's gone," older me continued. "Has been for 3 years now. And that's when it started. When you started." "When I started what? Forgetting?" She stood up slowly, walked to the window. Outside, I could see the backyard I'd never had, the swing set, the garden I'd planted but never tended. First it was little things. I'd forget where I put my keys, what day of the week it was, normal stuff. David said it was just stress, empty nest syndrome, but then... She turned back to me, and her face was haunted. Then I started forgetting Sarah, not all at once, just pieces. What her middle name was, her birthday, the way she laughed. And every time I forgot something about her, you remembered it. The room seemed to tilt. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that memories have to go somewhere. When we lose them, when we can't hold on to them anymore, they don't just disappear. They find a new home, a new person to carry them. That's insane. Is it?" She gestured to the attic around us. "You're sitting in a room that doesn't exist, talking to a version of yourself you've never met, remembering a daughter you never had. Tell me what's sane about any of this." I wanted to argue, wanted to find some logical explanation, but the memories kept flooding in. Sarah's first day of school, teaching her to ride a bike, the way she'd curl up next to me on the couch when she was sick. They felt more real than my actual life, more vivid than anything I could remember about my own past. "Why me?" I asked. "Why am I remembering your life?" Older me smiled sadly. "Because you're me. Or a version of me. The me that made different choices, stayed in Portland instead of moving to Burlington, never met David at that coffee shop, never had the life I'm now losing piece by piece." "I don't understand." Every choice we make creates a split, a branch. One version of us goes left, another goes right. Usually those branches never touch again. But sometimes, when one version starts to fade, their memories need somewhere to go, and they find their way to the closest match. Another you, living a different life, but still you. She moved closer, and I could see myself in her face. Not just the features, but the expressions, the way she bit her lip when she was thinking, the way her eyes crinkled when she was trying not to cry. "I have Alzheimer's," she said quietly. "Early onset, same as Mom. You remember Mom, don't you?" I did, but two versions of her. The mom who raised me alone in Portland, and the mom who lived with us in Burlington until the disease took her, who spent her last years calling me by her sister's name and asking when Dad was coming home from the war. "It's getting worse," older me continued. "I lose more every day. But the memories, they're finding their way to you, and soon there won't be anything left of me except what you remember." "No." I stood up so fast the chair rocked wildly. "No, this isn't. I can't. I have my own life, my own memories. I can't carry yours too. You don't have a choice." Her voice was gentle but firm. "It's already happening. Has been for months. Haven't you noticed? The gaps in your own past? The things you can't quite recall about your childhood, your college years?" I tried to remember my college roommate's name, tried to picture my high school graduation, tried to recall my first apartment after school. But all I could see was Sarah's dorm room, Michael's graduation, the house David and I bought when he got promoted. "You're taking my memories too," I breathed. "We're trading. Not trading, merging. Soon there won't be a you and a me, just us. One person carrying the memories of two lives. Until what?" She looked out the window again. The yard was fading. I could see through the swing set now. The garden was becoming translucent. "Until I'm gone completely, and then you'll have to find someone else. Another version, another branch, someone to carry what you can't hold anymore." This is crazy, But I could feel it happening. Feel my apartment in Denver becoming less real. Feel the house in Burlington solidifying around me. How do I stop it? "You don't." She turned back to me and I gasped. She was fading too. I could see the wall through her body. "You can't. The memories have to live somewhere, and we're all just temporary vessels, passing them along like stories around a campfire, making sure someone remembers, even if it's not us." "I don't want this. I don't want your life. It's not my life anymore," she said, and her voice was growing distant. "It's ours. And someday, when you're standing in an attic that shouldn't exist, talking to another version of yourself, you'll understand why it has to be this way." She was barely visible now, just an outline, a suggestion of a person. "Wait," I called out. "What happened to Sarah? Where is she?" But she was gone, and I was alone in an attic that was already starting to feel more familiar than my own apartment, surrounded by boxes of memories that weren't mine but were becoming mine with every passing second. I don't know how long I sat in that attic. Time works differently when you're caught between lives. But eventually, the sun started setting through the small window, painting the room in shades of orange and gold, the same light that used to signal dinner time, when I'd call the kids in from the yard and... No, I had to fight this. Had to hold on to myself, my real self. The one who lived alone in Denver and worked at an insurance office and had never been married, never had children, never. But what was real anymore? The memories of my life in Denver were fading like old photographs left in the sun. I could barely picture my apartment, couldn't remember my coworkers' names. Even my own last name seemed uncertain. Was it Morrison like on my driver's license?
or Campbell like on the mail downstairs. I stood up slowly. My hip twinged, the old injury from the accident, and I made my way to the stairs. Each step down felt like a choice, a surrender. By the time I reached the bottom, the door to my apartment was gone. In its place was a hallway I recognized, family photos lining the walls, that ugly runner carpet David's mother had given us that I'd never had the heart to throw away. The kitchen still had yellow walls. The rooster clock ticked away the seconds. On the refrigerator, held up by magnets from various family vacations, were Michael's report card and a postcard from Sarah. "Miss you guys. College is amazing. See you at Thanksgiving." Thanksgiving. She'd promised to come home for Thanksgiving, but she never made it. The accident was November 20th. Some drunk kid ran a red light. They said she didn't suffer. They always say that. I sank into a chair at the kitchen table. My kitchen table. And the wood was smooth under my fingers, worn from years of family dinners, homework sessions, late-night talks over coffee when the kids couldn't sleep. "Mom?" I looked up. Michael stood in the doorway, 22 now, so much like his father, same brown eyes, same crooked smile, but tired, worried, the way he'd been since... "You okay?" he asked. "You were up in the attic again." What could I say? That I'd been talking to another version of myself? That I was living memories that belonged to someone else? "I was just looking through some old photos." He nodded, came over and put his hand on my shoulder. "Dad called. He's going to be late. Budget meeting. I can start dinner if you want." "That would be nice." He squeezed my shoulder. Such a good boy. Man. He was a man now, working at the bank like his father, engaged to a sweet girl named Amy. They were planning a spring wedding. Sarah would have been the maid of honor. Sarah, my daughter who was gone but not gone, who lived now only in the memories I carried, memories that might not even be mine. Or were they? Did it matter anymore? She had existed, been loved, been real. As long as someone remembered her, wasn't that enough? Michael started pulling things from the refrigerator. He was making spaghetti, her favorite. We had it every Thursday now, a way to keep her at the table even though her chair stayed empty. "Mom?" He was looking at me with concern. "You sure you're okay? You seem different today." Different, if only he knew. But maybe he did. Maybe he noticed the way I sometimes forgot things, mixed up details, called him by the wrong name. Maybe he saw me fading the way I'd watched my mother fade, the way older me had faded in that attic that might or might not exist. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired." He nodded but didn't look convinced. "Maybe you should talk to Dr. Patterson again." He said the new medication might help with the confusion. Confusion. Is that what we were calling it? This slipping between lives? This carrying of memories that multiplied inside me like cells dividing? Sometimes I could feel them all. Not just 2 lives, but dozens. Hundreds. All the choices I'd made and unmade. All the paths taken and untaken. All the versions of me scattered across possibilities like stars across the sky. The front door opened. David's voice called out, "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was murder." He appeared in the kitchen doorway, loosening his tie. Still handsome at 50. Still the man who'd spilled coffee on me in that Burlington cafe 26 years ago. Or was it 27? The numbers kept shifting. Sometimes we'd been married 25 years. Sometimes 30. Sometimes Sarah was our oldest. Sometimes our youngest. Sometimes she was alive and Michael was... "Hey, beautiful," David said, kissing my cheek. His lips were warm, real, solid in a way that anchored me to this moment, this life, this version of the truth. "Smells good in here." "Michael's making dinner," I said. Good man. He ruffled our son's hair the way he'd done since Michael was small.
How was your day, hun? How was my day? I'd discovered I was living someone else's life, or they were living mine, or we were all just echoes of each other, bouncing between possibilities, carrying memories like vessels carrying water, trying not to spill too much before we passed them on. It was fine, I said. We ate dinner together. The three of us around the table set for 4, talking about normal things, work, wedding plans, the weather, and I tried to be present, tried to hold on to this moment, this reality. But I could feel the others pressing in. Lives where Sarah survived but Michael didn't. Lives where David and I divorced. Lives where we never met at all. Lives where I had different children, different names, different faces at this same table. Mom? Michael was looking at me. They both were. You're crying. I touched my cheek, wet. I hadn't realized. I'm sorry, I said. I was just remembering. David reached over and took my hand. It's okay. We all miss her. But that wasn't it. Not really. I was crying because I could feel myself fragmenting, becoming unstable, like older me in that attic, like my mother before her. Soon I wouldn't be able to hold all these memories. They'd need somewhere else to go, someone else to carry them. And somewhere, in some other life, another version of me was probably sitting in a Denver apartment, looking at photos she didn't recognize, hearing footsteps above her, beginning to remember things that hadn't happened to her. Not yet. That night I lay in bed next to David, listening to him breathe, feeling the weight of his arm across my waist. Real, solid, mine. But for how long? I love you, I whispered. Love you too, he mumbled, already half asleep. I stared at the ceiling, wondering if somewhere above me, in an attic that existed only sometimes, another me was watching, waiting, preparing to pass along more memories I couldn't refuse. And I understood now why older me had smiled so sadly, why she'd said I'd understand someday, because this is what we are, all of us. Not single lives, but collections, anthologies, carrying stories that may or may not be our own, remembering faces we've never seen, missing people we've never met, living lives we never chose but can't forget. And the scariest part? You're doing it too, right now. As you listen to this, you're remembering things that might not be yours, that recipe your grandmother used to make. But which grandmother? The vacation you took as a child. But were you really there? The friend from high school whose name you can't quite recall. Did they exist? Or are they bleeding through from another life? Another you? Check your photos. Look for the spaces where people should be. The faces that seem almost familiar. The moments that feel like dreams but hurt like memories. And if you find them, if you realize you're carrying someone else's story, don't be afraid. We all are. Every one of us is a library of lives, a repository of possibilities, keeping the memories safe until it's time to pass them on. Because that's what love is, really. Not letting someone disappear, even when they're gone, even when they were never there at all. I can hear footsteps above me again, slow, careful. Another me preparing to share another memory, another life, another loss I'll carry as my own, and I'll take it. All of it. Every joy and sorrow and moment between. Because someone has to remember. Someone has to hold on to Sarah and Michael and David, and all the others who exist in the spaces between what was and what might have been. Even if that someone isn't exactly me. Even if I'm not exactly real, even if you're beginning to wonder, as you lie there in the dark, if you are either. Sweet dreams. And if you dream of lives you've never lived,
of faces you've never seen but somehow know, of memories that feel too real to be imagination. Remember this: you're not going crazy. You're just remembering. And somewhere, another you is grateful that anyone, still does. Subscribe if you need to know you're not alone in this. Comment if you found photos you don't remember taking. Share this with someone who might be living more than one life. Because we're all connected, all of us, across every choice and possibility. And the memories, well, the memories will find their way home, one way or another. They always do. Story number 3. The entity that feeds on bad dreams. The scratching started 3 weeks ago. Not loud, just this soft, persistent sound coming from inside my bedroom wall at 3:17 a.m. Every single night, like clockwork. But here's the thing that made my skin crawl. The scratching only happened after I had nightmares. And lately, I'd been having a lot of nightmares. Before you click away, before you tell yourself this is just another scary story, let me ask you something. When was the last time you woke up from a bad dream and felt like something was watching you? Like the darkness in your room was somehow heavier? Stick around. Because what I discovered living in that cramped apartment in Portland might explain why your nightmares feel so real, and why sometimes they follow you into the waking world. Hit that subscribe button if you dare. But I'm warning you, after hearing this, you might not sleep the same way again. The story begins now. My name is Alex Chen, and 3 months ago, I moved into a studio apartment on Hawthorne Boulevard in Portland, Oregon. Rent was cheap, suspiciously cheap for the area. But when you're a freelance graphic designer barely making ends meet, you don't ask too many questions. The building was old, probably built in the 1920s. My unit was on the 3rd floor, tucked into a corner with one window facing a brick wall. Not exactly a view worth writing home about. The landlord, Mrs. Kowalski, was this tiny Polish woman who always smelled like cabbage and mothballs. When she showed me the place, she kept crossing herself and muttering something under her breath. "You sleep good, yes?" she had asked, her accent thick. "No. Bad dreams?" I laughed it off, told her I slept like a baby. If only I'd known. The first 2 weeks were fine, normal even. I set up my workstation by the window, hung some plants, made the place feel like home. Then the dreams started. They weren't violent or gory, nothing like that. They were worse. They were empty. I'd dream I was walking through my apartment, but all the walls were gone. Just endless black space stretching in every direction. And in that darkness, something was breathing, slow, wet, patient. I'd wake up gasping, sheets soaked with sweat. My heart would be pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the scratching that followed. Always at 3:17 a.m., always from the same spot in the wall. Right behind where my head rested on the pillow. It sounded like fingernails on drywall, deliberate, methodical, like something was trying to claw its way through. The first few nights, I convinced myself it was mice. Or maybe the old pipes. Buildings this age made all sorts of weird noises, right? But mice don't keep perfect time, and pipes don't scratch in patterns. Because that's what I realized on the 4th night. There was a pattern. 3 long scratches. Pause. 2 short. Pause. 1 long. Then silence until the next nightmare. I started keeping a dream journal. Yeah, I know how that sounds. But when you're running on 3 hours of sleep and mainlining coffee just to function, you'll try anything. I needed to find a connection, some reason why this was happening. The dreams were getting more specific, more personal. I'd dream about conversations I'd had years ago, but the words would be wrong, twisted. My college roommate Sarah would be telling me about her day, but her mouth would be full of moths. My ex-boyfriend Marcus would be cooking dinner, but the kitchen would be flooding with something black and viscous. And always, that breathing in the darkness, getting closer. By the end of the second week, I was a wreck. My clients were noticing. I'd missed 2 deadlines, something I never did. My hands shook when I tried to work. Every time I closed my eyes, even for a second, I could feel that presence waiting for me. That's when I decided to record it. The scratching, I mean. I set up my phone on the nightstand, pointed at the wall. If I could prove it was real, maybe I could get Mrs. Kowalski to do something about it. Move me to another unit, call an exterminator, something, anything. That night, the nightmare was different. I was in my apartment again, but this time I wasn't alone. There was a woman sitting on my couch. She was maybe 40, wearing a faded floral dress. Her hair was wet, plastered to her skull. She was crying, these horrible, silent sobs that shook her whole body. "It's hungry," she whispered, looking right at me. "It's been so hungry for so long." I tried to ask what she meant, but my voice wouldn't work. She stood up, and water poured off her like she'd just climbed out of a pool, or a lake, or... "You're feeding it," she said. "Every night you're making it stronger. And when it's strong enough..." She reached for me, and I woke up. 3:17 a.m., right on schedule. But this time, the scratching was different. Louder, more insistent. And between the scratches, I could swear I heard something else. Breathing. I grabbed my phone with trembling fingers, checking the recording. What I saw made my blood turn to ice water. The video showed my wall, just like I'd set it up. But at exactly 3:17, something happened. The wall rippled, like it was made of liquid instead of plaster. And for just a second, just a frame, I could see something pressing against it from the other side. A face. I didn't sleep for the next 36 hours. Couldn't. Every time I started to drift off, I'd remember that face in the wall. Pale, distorted, hungry. Instead, I researched. Thank God for Portland's 24-hour coffee shops and their Wi-Fi. I must have looked insane. Unwashed hair, bags under my eyes, muttering to myself as I scrolled through page after page of local history. The Hawthorne Building. That's what my apartment complex used to be called, built in 1923 as a boarding house for single women. Seemed normal enough. But then I found the newspaper archives. October 15th, 1947. Woman found dead in Hawthorne Building bathtub. Margaret Ashford, age 41. Apparent suicide by drowning. She'd been a tenant for 3 years. Neighbors reported she'd been complaining about nightmares for weeks before her death. Said something was eating her dreams. October 22nd, 1947. Second death at Hawthorne Building raises questions. Ruth Chen, no relation to me, despite the last name, age 28, found in the same bathtub, same cause of death. She'd left a note. "It won't stop feeding. Make it stop." October 30th, 1947. City closes Hawthorne Building after third drowning. Patricia Velez, 35. This time, there were witnesses. Sort of. The woman in the adjacent room, one Mrs. Dorothy Kowalski, reported hearing scratching in the walls all night. Said she saw water seeping through the cracks. By morning, Patricia was dead. Dorothy Kowalski. My landlord's maiden name was Dorothy. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my phone. I called the building office. No answer. Of course not. It was 4 a.m, but I couldn't wait. I needed answers. I took an Uber back to the building. The driver kept glancing at me in the mirror, probably wondering if I was on something. I must have looked like hell. Felt like it too. Mrs. Kowalski lived in the basement unit. I'd never been down there before. The stairs were narrow, creaking with every step. The hallway smelled like mold and something else. Something sweet and rotten. I knocked. Waited.
knocked again. "I know you're in there," I called out. "I know about 1947, about the drownings." The door opened a crack. One watery blue eye peered out at me. "You should not be here," she whispered. "3 women died," I said. "In my apartment, and you were there. You saw it." She was quiet for so long I thought she might just close the door in my face. Then, with a sigh that seemed to come from her bones, she let me in. Her apartment was strange. Every surface was covered in religious symbols: crosses, stars of David, Hindu gods, Buddhist prayers, like she was hedging her bets against whatever was out there. "Sit," she said, gesturing to a plastic-covered couch. "I make tea." I didn't want tea. I wanted answers. But something in her voice made me obey. She moved slowly, like every step hurt. When she finally sat across from me, steam rising from 2 chipped mugs, she looked ancient. "My mother," she began. "She was Dorothy Kowalski. I am named for her. She tried to warn them, the women, but they did not listen." "Warn them about what?" She took a sip of tea. Her hands were shaking worse than mine. "In old country, we have stories. Things that live between. Not alive, not dead. They feed on, how you say, the darkness in people. Fear, sadness, bad dreams." "That's just folklore," I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were hollow. I'd seen that face in my wall. "Folklore," she repeated, laughing bitterly. "Yes, this is what the women said too, before they drowned themselves, before it grew strong enough to..." She trailed off, staring into her tea like it held secrets. "Strong enough to what?" "To cross over. To stop needing dreams. To start needing more." My stomach churned. How do I stop it? She looked at me then, really looked at me. "You don't feed it. But I can't control my dreams." "No dreams if no sleep. I can't stay awake forever." "No," she agreed. "You cannot." The silence stretched between us like a living thing. Finally, she stood, shuffling to an old wooden cabinet. She pulled out a leather journal, yellowed with age. "My mother's," she said, handing it to me. "She wrote everything. Maybe you find answer." I took the journal with trembling hands. It smelled like dust and fear. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "When I moved in?" She wouldn't meet my eyes. I hoped it had starved. Been so long since someone stayed in that room. Since someone fed it." "And the others? The other tenants?" "They don't dream like you do," she said simply. "It needs specific food, creative people, sensitive people, people who dream in color and remember. People like me." I left her apartment clutching the journal. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the Portland sky in shades of pink and gold. Normal people were beginning their days, going to work, living their lives. And here I was, carrying the diary of a dead woman who'd witnessed something impossible. Back in my apartment, I made more coffee and opened the journal. Dorothy Kowalski's handwriting was precise, old-fashioned. The first entries were mundane: grocery lists, gossip about other tenants. Then, October 1st, 1947. "The new girl, Margaret, says she hears scratching. I told her it was mice. What else could I say? That I hear it too? That I've heard it every night since I moved in? That sometimes I see wet footprints in the hallway that lead nowhere?" October 10th. "Margaret looks terrible. Says she dreams of drowning every night. I gave her my mother's cross. She laughed, said she wasn't religious. If only she knew. It's not about religion. It's about believing in something, anything, something stronger than the hunger in the walls. October 14th. I found Margaret in the bathroom at 3 a.m., just standing there, staring at the full bathtub. Her eyes were empty, like something had already eaten the part of her that made her, her. I pulled her back to her room, sat with her until dawn, but I can't watch her every night. And it's getting stronger. I can feel it pressing against the boundaries. Soon it won't need the dreams to feed. Soon it will take everything. October 15th. Margaret is dead. I failed. And now it's tasted death, real death, not just the little deaths we have in our nightmares. It will want more. God help whoever comes next. My coffee had gone cold. Outside, I could hear the normal sounds of the city waking up, cars honking, people talking, life going on. But inside my apartment, time felt frozen. I flipped through more pages, lists of names, women who'd lived in my apartment over the years. Most stayed only a few weeks, some lasted months. But next to 3 names, Dorothy had drawn small crosses, the ones who hadn't made it out. And then, at the very back of the journal, folded and tucked into the binding, I found something else. A photograph, black and white, edges yellowed. It showed the bathroom, my bathroom, but the walls were covered in something. Symbols, drawings. They hurt to look at, like my eyes couldn't quite process what they were. On the back, in different handwriting, the feeding ground, where it grows strong. I stood up so fast, I knocked over my coffee. It spread across the table, soaking into the journal pages, but I didn't care. I was already moving to the bathroom. It looked normal. White tiles, slightly rusty fixtures. Normal. But now I knew better. I got on my knees, examining every inch. And there, barely visible under layers of paint, were marks, scratches, symbols, just like in the photograph. They'd painted over it, again and again, but it was still there. The feeding ground. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop looking or join them. Your choice. I should have left. Packed my stuff, broken my lease, found somewhere else to live. That would have been the smart thing to do. But if you've ever been truly sleep-deprived, you know that logic goes out the window. Your brain starts making connections that don't quite make sense. You become stubborn, reckless. Plus, I was angry. 3 women had died and countless others had suffered, all because of some thing that fed on nightmares. And everyone just covered it up, painted over it, pretended it wasn't happening. Well, I was done pretending. I spent the next day preparing. If I couldn't avoid sleeping forever, I'd at least go in armed with knowledge. I read every page of Dorothy's journal, made notes, cross-referenced with online sources about sleep paralysis, night terrors, and something called parasomnia entities, creatures that existed in the space between waking and sleeping. Most of it was garbage, New Age nonsense mixed with creepypasta stories. But buried in all that noise, I found patterns. Stories from different cultures, different time periods, all describing something similar. A hunger that lived in the walls. Fed on fear. Grew stronger with each feeding until what? The stories never said. Just that once it got strong enough, it didn't need to hide anymore. I also found something else. A forum post from 2019. Username, Survivor PDX. Lived through this. Hawthorne Building, 3rd floor corner unit. The thing in the walls is real. It starts with nightmares, then scratching, then worse. I got out after it tried to pull me through. Yeah, through the wall. Don't ask me how. Physics doesn't apply to nightmare logic. If you're reading this and living there, get out. Or if you're stubborn like I was, at least protect yourself. Salt lines, Iron nails in the walls, and whatever you do, don't let it know you're aware of it. Play dumb. It feeds on fear, but it thrives on acknowledgement. I'd already broken that last rule. It knew I knew. The text message proved that. As darkness fell over Portland, I prepared my defenses. Did I feel ridiculous spreading salt along my windowsills and doorframe? Absolutely. Did I do it anyway? You bet. I hammered iron nails into the wall where the scratching always came from. My landlord would probably keep my security deposit, but that was the least of my worries. Then I did something either very brave or very stupid. I set up a camera, not just to record, but to live stream. If something happened to me, at least there'd be evidence. Real evidence that couldn't be painted over or explained away. I even started a stream on YouTube, called it Night Watch, Apartment 3C. Only had about 12 viewers, mostly people who thought it was some kind of ARG. One username caught my eye, Watcher in Walls. They didn't comment, just watched. By 2 a.m., exhaustion was winning. My eyes kept drifting shut despite the energy drinks and coffee. The room seemed to pulse with each blink, walls breathing in and out. I slapped myself, pinched my arms, but sleep was coming whether I wanted it or not. At 2:47 a.m., I lost the fight. The dream was immediate and vivid. I was in my apartment, but it was wrong. The walls were sweating. Black liquid ran down in streams, pooling on the floor. And in the center of the room stood all three women. Margaret, Ruth, Patricia. Their skin was blue-gray, clothes soaked, hair dripping. "You fed it," Margaret said, her voice gurgling. "Just like we did. But you fed it more," Ruth added. "So much fear, so much awareness. It hasn't eaten this well in decades." Patricia stepped forward, and I could see something moving under her skin, like worms or fingers. "It's almost strong enough now, almost ready to stop hiding." "What does it want?" I managed to ask. They laughed, all three in perfect unison. The sound was like water going down a drain. "It wants what any starving thing wants," Margaret said. "To eat until it's full. And it's been starving for so very long." The walls began to crack. Not like normal cracks. These were spreading like veins, pulsing with that black liquid. And through the cracks, I could see something vast and hungry pressing in. "But here's a secret," Patricia whispered, leaning close. Her breath smelled like lake water and decay. "It can only take what's freely given. Your fear, your dreams, your life. You have to give it permission." I started. "Don't you?" Ruth interrupted. "Every night you stay here, knowing what lives in these walls, isn't that permission? Every nightmare you have, every moment of terror you feed it, isn't that consent?" The cracks were widening. Something was pushing through. Not a hand or a face, but something that my mind couldn't quite process. It was absence given form, hunger made manifest. "Wake up," Margaret said urgently. "Wake up now, before—" I jolted awake at exactly 3:17 a.m. But this time there was no scratching. There was knocking, slow, deliberate, from inside the wall. Knock, knock, knock. Like someone asking to come in. My live stream chat was going crazy, messages flying by too fast to read. The viewer count had jumped to over 100. And Watcher in Walls had finally commented, "Answer it." I stared at the wall. The knocking came again, patient, almost polite. "No," I said out loud. My voice cracked. "I don't give permission. You can't come in." The knocking stopped. For a moment I thought I'd won, that it was that simple. Just say no. Don't give permission. Then the wall began to bulge outward, not cracking, not breaking, stretching, like rubber, like skin. The paint split, revealing old wood beneath. The wood groaned, bowed, and through it all, I could see that darkness pressing in, the shape of fingers, a hand, an arm, reaching.
I scrambled backward, fell off my bed. My laptop crashed to the floor, but the camera kept recording, kept streaming. The salt line at the wall began to smoke. The iron nails glowed red hot, then white, then melted completely. Whatever rules I thought I'd learned, whatever protections I'd put in place, they were nothing. Children's games against something ancient and patient and hungry. The bulge in the wall grew larger. I could make out features now. Not quite a face, but the suggestion of one. Eyes that weren't eyes. A mouth that was just an absence where a mouth should be. And it was smiling. "You don't need permission," I whispered, realization dawning. "That was a lie, you just... like the fear better when we think we have a choice." The thing in the wall laughed. Not with sound, but with vibration. I felt it in my bones, in my teeth, in the hollow spaces behind my eyes. Then it began to push through in earnest. I did the only thing I could think of. I ran, grabbed my phone, my keys, and ran. Down the stairs, past other apartments where people were sleeping safely, unaware of what was birthing itself on the third floor. Behind me, I heard my door explode outward. Not open. Explode. Wood and metal and 40 years of paint scattering like shrapnel. I burst out onto Hawthorne Boulevard at 3:23 a.m. The street was mostly empty. A few late-night stragglers, a delivery truck. Normal city life. I must have looked insane. Barefoot, in pajamas, running like hell itself was after me. Because it was. I could feel it following. Not running. It didn't need to run. It moved like hunger moves. Inevitable, patient, always closer than you think. The streetlights flickered as it passed. Shadow pooled in its wake like spilled ink. I ran for the one place that might be safe. The only person who might understand. Mrs. Kowalski opened her door before I could knock, like she'd been waiting. Her face was grim but unsurprised. "It's out," I gasped. "Yes," she said simply. "I felt it. The whole building did, even if they don't know it. Their dreams will be very bad tonight." She pulled me inside, slamming the door. The religious symbols on her walls were glowing faintly. Actually glowing, like they were straining against something. "What do we do?" I asked. She was already moving, pulling items from drawers. Old things, strange things. A knife that looked like it was made of black glass. A mirror with no reflection. A book bound in something that wasn't leather. "We do what my mother should have done in 1947, she said. "We finish what was started." "Which is?" She looked at me with those watery blue eyes, and for the first time, I saw the steel beneath. "We feed it," she said. "But not what it wants. What it needs." "I don't understand." The lights went out. All of them. The glowing symbols flared once, bright as stars, then died. In the darkness, something knocked on the door. Polite, patient, hungry. "Don't move," Mrs. Kowalski whispered in the darkness. "Don't even breathe loud. It hunts by fear." The knocking came again. 3 times. Pause. 3 times. Like a mockery of normalcy. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Feel sweat running down my back despite the cold. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But where would I go? It was out there. Free. And it was hungry. Mrs. Kowalski's hand found mine in the dark. Her skin was papery, cold, but her grip was strong. "Listen," she breathed. "What my mother knew, what those women discovered too late, it doesn't just feed on fear. It feeds on emptiness. The void where dreams should be. The hollow places in people. But that's what nightmares are," I whispered back. "Empty dreams. Dark dreams. No." Her voice was urgent. "Nightmares are still dreams, still creation. Even fear is something. But this thing, it eats the nothing, the absence. And the more we feed it our darkness, the emptier we become until..."
The door bulged inward, just like my wall had. Whatever was outside wasn't bound by physics anymore. It had fed too well, grown too strong. Until we're hollow enough for it to wear us, she finished. Like clothes, like skin. The thought made my stomach lurch. Those 3 women. Had they really drowned themselves? Or had they been worn, used up from the inside until only the shell remained? So how do we stop it? She squeezed my hand harder. We fill the void, not with fear, not with darkness, with... The door exploded inward. What came through wasn't quite visible, not quite there. It was more like the absence of light had taken form. Where it moved, reality seemed to thin. I could see through the walls, through the floor, into spaces that shouldn't exist. Spaces between seconds, between heartbeats, between thoughts. And in those spaces, things moved, writhed, fed. Mrs. Kowalski pulled me behind her couch, mumbling words in Polish. Prayers, maybe, or curses. The thing that had been in my walls swept through her apartment like smoke, touching everything. Where it passed, her religious symbols crumbled to dust. Faith wasn't enough. Not anymore. "The book," she hissed, shoving the leather-bound volume into my hands. "Page 47. Read it. Out loud. Don't stop, no matter what you see." I fumbled in the darkness, found the page by touch. The words were in English, thank God, but they felt wrong in my mouth. Heavy, old. "In the beginning," I read, voice shaking, "there was not darkness. There was nothing, and nothing was hungry, for it knew not what it was to be full." The presence in the room shifted, focused on me. I felt its attention like cold water flooding my lungs. "Keep reading," Mrs. Kowalski shouted. She had the black glass knife in her hand, slashing at shadows that shouldn't have been solid but somehow were. "And so nothing ate," I continued, the words pulling themselves from my throat. "It ate light and shadow, dream and nightmare, hope and fear. But still it was empty, for nothing cannot be filled." The thing rushed at me, not moving through space but folding it. So one moment it was across the room and the next it was there, reaching with appendages that weren't quite hands toward the book, toward my face, toward the words spilling from my mouth. Mrs. Kowalski threw herself between us. The knife flashed, and for the first time the thing made a sound. Not a scream, not a roar. An absence of sound so profound it made my ears bleed. "The last page," she cried, wrestling with something I couldn't quite see. "Skip to the last page." I flipped frantically, pages crumbling under my sweating fingers. The last page was different. The words weren't typed or written. They were carved, burned into the paper. "But one day," I read, "nothing met something, and something said, 'You are hungry because you are not. Let me show you how to be.'" The struggling stopped. Everything stopped. Even the air seemed frozen. In that stillness, Mrs. Kowalski spoke. Not to me, to it. "My mother tried to destroy you," she said. "Those women tried to escape you, but they were wrong. You can't destroy nothing. You can't run from absence. You can only..." She pressed the knife into my hand. It was warm, wet. I realized with horror that she was bleeding. "Only fill it," she finished. "With something, with anything, even if that something is..." She pulled me to my feet, surprisingly strong for her age. The thing that had haunted my walls, that had eaten dreams and driven women to their deaths, hung in the air before us, waiting, listening. "A story," she said. "The oldest magic, the first creation. Nothing becomes something when you give it a name, a purpose, a story." I understood then. Understood what the book was. Not a spell or a prayer, but a story about the thing. About nothing becoming something. About hunger finding its name. But if I name it, I said, if I give it a story, it becomes real, she confirmed, bound by rules, by beginnings and endings, by the shape of the tale. And if I don't? She looked at the thing hovering before us, at the absence that had grown strong enough to break through walls, to wear people like clothes, to feed on emptiness itself. Then it stays nothing, she said, and nothing can't be stopped. The knife grew heavier in my hand. The thing waited, patient as eternity. I could feel my live stream still running somewhere, recording this impossible moment. People watching, commenting, trying to understand. But they couldn't. Not really. Because this wasn't their story to tell. It was mine. I raised the knife, not as a weapon, but as a pen. And in the air, I began to write. Not with ink or blood, but with words, with story, with the oldest magic humans knew, the power to make nothing into something. Once, I said, and the word hung in the air like fire. There was a hunger that lived in the walls. The thing convulsed, twisted, began to take shape. It fed on emptiness, I continued, walking slowly around it, writing my circle of words. On the spaces between dreams, on the hollow places in hearts, and for years it grew fat on fear. A form was emerging, almost human, almost familiar. But the hunger didn't know it was hungry, didn't know it was anything at all, until one night, in a small apartment in Portland, it met someone who saw it, really saw it, and in seeing, began to understand. The face that formed was mine, but wrong, empty, hollow, what I would have become if I'd let it wear me. The hunger had a name, I said, my voice stronger now. It was called absence, and absence was tired, so very, very tired of being nothing. The thing, absence, shuddered, made a sound that might have been a sob. So the storyteller made a deal, I continued. Not to feed absence emptiness or fear or the dark spaces in dreams, but to feed it something else, something it had never tasted. I stopped directly in front of it, my hollow twin, my might have been. Purpose, I said. The storyteller gave absence a job, a reason to be, not to feed on nightmares, but to eat them, to take the bad dreams, the empty dreams, the hollow places that hurt, and devour them before they could devour the dreamer. Absence tilted its head, listening, considering. And in return, I finished, absence would have what it always wanted. Not just food, but fullness. Not just existence, but meaning. A place in the story, a name, a home. The knife dissolved in my hand. The words I'd written in the air flared once, bright as stars, then sank into absence like rain into dry earth. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then absence changed. The hollow places filled, not with features, but with purpose. The hungry void became something else, something that still fed, but fed with intent. It looked at me with eyes that weren't quite eyes, nodded once, and then it was gone. Not vanished, not destroyed, but elsewhere, doing what it now was meant to do. Mrs. Kowalski sagged against me, exhausted. You gave it a story, she said. A purpose. That was dangerous. More dangerous than letting it run free? She laughed, weak but genuine. No, you're right. Better a guardian of nightmares than a devourer of dreamers. We stood there in her destroyed apartment, surrounded by the dust of failed protections and the echo of impossibility. Slowly, the lights flickered back on. The world reasserted itself, pretending nothing had happened. But I knew better. Somewhere out there, in the spaces between sleeping and waking, absence was working, eating the nightmares before they could eat the dreamers, fed and full and finally, finally real. I helped Mrs. Kowalski to her couch, then checked my phone. The live stream had ended at some point, but not before capturing something. The comments were wild. Theories, fears, a few people claiming they'd felt their nightmares disappear mid-dream. And one comment, from Watcher, in Walls, "Thank you for the purpose." I stayed with Mrs. Kowalski until dawn, making sure she was okay. She told me stories of her mother, of the years of silence, of the weight of knowing something that couldn't be shared. "Will it last?" I asked as the sun painted Portland in shades of gold. "The story I gave it?" She shrugged. "Stories last as long as they're told, as long as they're believed, as long as they serve their purpose. And if it gets hungry again? If eating nightmares isn't enough?" She smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. "Then someone will tell it a new story. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked." I moved out of apartment 3C that week. Found a new place across town. Somewhere with no history, no scratching in the walls, no absence pressing in. But sometimes, when I wake from what should have been a nightmare and find only peaceful darkness, I whisper a thank you to the nothing that became something. To absence, who found its purpose in the space between dreams. And on nights when sleep won't come, when the darkness feels too heavy, I remember what Mrs. Kowalski told me as I left her apartment for the last time. Every building has its ghosts, every wall has its whispers, but not all of them are hungry. Some are just waiting for someone to see them, to name them, to give them a reason to be something more than shadows. She passed away last month. Natural causes, the obituary said. Peaceful in her sleep. Her daughter called to tell me, said she'd wanted me to know, said she'd left me something in her will. It was the journal, Dorothy's journal, and a note, for the next storyteller, because there's always a next one, and the walls are always listening. I keep the journal on my shelf now. Sometimes I flip through it, reading the stories of women who faced the hunger in the walls. Sometimes I add my own notes, updates, reports of dreams that vanish mid-nightmare, of people waking refreshed who shouldn't be, of a presence that eats darkness instead of light. The truth is, I don't know if I saved anything that night. Don't know if I made things better or just different. But I do know this. Somewhere in Portland, in an old building on Hawthorne Boulevard, apartment 3C sits empty. The landlord can't seem to rent it. People who view it report feeling watched, not threatened, just observed, like something is waiting to see if they dream in color, if they remember, if they might need protection from their own darkness. And sometimes, just sometimes, the right person moves in. Someone whose nightmares are too heavy, too real, too much. They hear scratching in the walls at 3:17 a.m. and prepare to run. But the scratching isn't trying to get in anymore. It's trying to get the nightmares out, before they can take root, before they can hollow you out from the inside, before you become just another empty space for something else to wear. That's the story I told. The purpose I gave. A hunger transformed into a guardian. Nothing became something. And every night in cities across the world, people wake from nightmares they can't quite remember. Hearts racing, sheets soaked, but empty. The fear is there, but the dream is gone. Eaten, digested, turned into nothing by the thing that used to be nothing. Is it perfect? No. Is it safe? Probably not. But it's better than the alternative. Better than 3 women drowning in their own emptiness. Better than walls that birth hunger. Better than nothing at all. But to eat the darkness before it can eat you. And if you wake with your heart racing but no memory of why, whisper a small thank you to the walls, to the spaces between,
to the thing that found its purpose in protecting dreamers from their dreams. Just maybe don't look too hard for it. Don't seek it out. Don't try to see what can't quite be seen. Because purposes can change. Stories can be rewritten. And hunger, even with the best intentions, is still hunger. Sweet dreams, listeners. Or better yet, no dreams at all. Just peaceful, empty, protected sleep. Now I have to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Have you noticed your nightmares feeling different lately? Shorter? Less vivid? Like something is cutting them off before they can really take hold? Have you woken up knowing you should remember something terrible, but finding only blank space where the dream should be? Have you heard scratching in your walls at 3:17 a.m.? Because if you have, well, maybe you should check the comment section below. Share your experience. Compare notes with others who felt their dreams go missing in the night. And if you haven't, if your nightmares still come full and vivid and terrifying, maybe that's worse. Maybe that means nothing is protecting you. Nothing is eating your darkness before it can take root. Maybe you're on your own. Subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more true stories from the spaces between. Ring that notification bell if you want to know when the walls start whispering again. And please share this with someone who's been having bad dreams lately. They might need to know they're not alone, or that something is making sure they are. Until next time, this is Tales After Midnight, reminding you that the real horror isn't what goes bump in the night. It's what eats the bumps before you can hear them. Good night. Story number 4. The research consumed me. I started with reverse image searches. Nothing. Art history databases. Nothing. Then I remembered something Mrs. Chen had said. Salem, estate auction, 1992. The Salem Public Library had digitized their newspaper archives. I spent hours scrolling through microfiche scans, looking for estate sales, auctions, anything. My eyes burned, but I couldn't stop. Something pulled me forward, like invisible strings. Then I found it. August 15th, 1992. Renowned collector's estate to be auctioned following mysterious disappearance. The collector's name was Vivian Marsh. The article described her as an eccentric woman who'd amassed an enormous collection of portraits, specifically of women. She'd vanished without a trace in June, leaving behind a mansion filled with hundreds of paintings. But it was the photo that made my blood freeze. Vivian Marsh had green gold eyes. I cross-referenced her name with the missing women from 1987. She wasn't listed as missing. She was listed as a person of interest. The police had questioned her about the disappearances, but found no evidence. Of course they hadn't. The evidence was hanging on walls, watching from gilded frames. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop digging." Then another. "You're going to ruin everything." And another. "We've been so happy." I threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall and fell silent. The article had mentioned the auction house, Thornfield Estate Sales. They'd gone out of business in 2003, but I found a cached version of their website. Most of the links were dead, but one worked. A catalog from the Marsh Estate auction. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the listings. Dozens of portraits, all attributed to various unknown artists, all featuring women with striking eyes. And there, lot number 47. Portrait of a woman in green. Oil on canvas. Circa 1920s. No signature. The description noted something odd. Painting shows unusual luminescent quality under certain lighting conditions. Bidding starts at $100. Harold Chen had paid $750. I was so absorbed in the research. I didn't notice the sunset. Didn't notice the room growing dark. Not until I heard it. Footsteps. In my bedroom. Slow. Deliberate. The sound of bare feet on hardwood. I froze at my desk. The footsteps stopped at my bedroom door. Then, nothing. Just breathing. That familiar, soft breathing I'd heard in my dreams. "I know you're there," I whispered. The doorknob turned. But when the door opened, no one was there. Just my empty bedroom and the painting glowing in the darkness. I approached slowly. The woman's expression had changed again. She looked concerned, worried. Her painted brow was furrowed, her lips pressed thin. "What?" I asked. "What's wrong? Isn't this what you wanted?" That's when I noticed the other change. The background faces. The other women. They were clearer now, and they all looked terrified. One of them was mouthing something. I leaned closer, trying to read her lips. "Run." The painting's surface rippled like water. The terrified face disappeared, swallowed back into the dark oils. When the surface stilled, all the background faces were gone. It was just her again. Just those green-gold eyes. But now I understood. She wasn't the only one in there. She was just the guard. The keeper. The one who brought the others across. I stumbled backward, knocking over my desk chair. My laptop crashed to the floor. In the blue light of the error screen, I saw my reflection in the painting's glass. I was almost unrecognizable. My transformation was nearly complete. Another day, maybe 2, and I'd be ready to cross over, to join the collection. That's when she spoke again. Not the painting, the real her. Standing behind me, I spun around. The room was empty, but I could feel her presence, smell her perfume, something floral and old, like pressed flowers in a forgotten book. "You're so close," her voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "Why are you fighting it now? You've been so willing, so eager." "Because I know what you are now," I said to the empty room. "You're not offering belonging. You're offering imprisonment." She laughed, that autumn leaves sound that made my teeth hurt. "Prison? Oh, my dear, you still don't understand. We're not prisoners. We're preservationists. We're protecting something precious." "Protecting what?" "Beauty. True beauty. The kind that transcends time." Her voice grew softer, almost sad. "Do you know what happens to beauty in your world? It fades, it wrinkles, it dies. But in here, in the paint, we're eternal, perfect, forever." "That's not living," I protested. "No," she agreed. "It's better." I felt her breath on my neck, cold as winter moonlight. "Look at yourself," she whispered. "Really look. When was the last time you felt this beautiful, this seen, this important?" I didn't want to look, but my eyes found the mirror anyway. She was right. I was beautiful. More beautiful than I'd ever imagined possible. But it wasn't my beauty. It was borrowed. Stolen. A mask that was eating my real face. "One more night," she coaxed. "Just sleep under my gaze one more time. Let go of that plane. Lonely girl. Become who you were meant to be." No. But even as I said it, I felt my resolve weakening. The pull was so strong, like gravity, like addiction. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, nothing else. I had to get out, had to run. But at the door, I hesitated. "If you leave now," her voice hardened, "you can never come back. The beauty fades. The connection breaks. You'll be alone again. Ordinary again. Forever."
My hand shook on the doorknob. "Is that really what you want?" she asked. "To go back to being invisible? To eating lunch alone? To spending your evenings talking to a painting because no real person cares enough to listen?" The truth of it hit like a physical blow. She was right. Before the painting, I'd been nobody. Just another face in the crowd. Another lonely soul in a city of millions. "I made you special," she continued. "I gave you purpose, and this is how you repay me?" I turned the knob. "You'll be back," she said, and for the first time, I heard anger in her voice. "They always come back. The loneliness becomes unbearable. The memory of beauty, torture. You'll return, and when you do, I won't be so gentle." I ran, down the stairs, to my car, drove without thinking, without direction, just away, always away. But she was right about one thing. The withdrawal hit almost immediately. By the time I reached Gresham, my hands were shaking. My skin felt too tight, like it was shrinking back to its original shape. The beautiful features I'd grown accustomed to were melting away like wax. I pulled into the first motel I saw. The clerk gave me a strange look as I checked in. I glimpsed myself in the lobby mirror and understood why. I looked like someone between faces, features shifting and unstable. Neither the old me nor the new. In the motel room, I splashed cold water on my face, watched the last of the green drain from my eyes. It hurt, not physically, but deeper, like losing a part of myself I'd never known I wanted. I've been here for hours now, typing this story on my phone, trying to document everything while it's still fresh, while I still remember what her voice sounded like, what it felt like to be beautiful. The motel room has a painting too, a generic landscape, mountains and trees, nothing special, but I can't stop staring at it, wondering if all paintings are doorways, if all art hungers for souls. It's 3:47 a.m. now. I should be tired, but sleep feels dangerous. What if I dream of her? What if the dreams pull me back? My phone has 37 missed calls, all from unknown numbers. I don't need to answer to know who's calling. The worst part? The part that terrifies me more than transformation, more than imprisonment, more than losing myself. I want to answer. I want to hear her voice again. Want her to tell me I'm special. Want to feel beautiful. Even if it's a lie. Even if it costs everything. The motel room feels so empty. The silence. Unbearable. I understand now why the others gave in. Why Harold Chen brought her home despite investigating those disappearances. Why Mrs. Chen kept her all those years. Loneliness is the real monster. The painting just offers an escape. I'm going to post this story. Share it as a warning, or maybe as a confession. I don't know anymore, but I can already feel myself making excuses to go back, just to check on my apartment, just to get some clothes, just to see her one more time. The sun will rise soon. I'll be faced with a choice. Drive further away, start over somewhere new, forget this ever happened, or go home. I already know which one I'll choose. Because she's right. The loneliness is unbearable, and I'd rather be a beautiful prisoner than an ugly free woman. God help me. I'd rather be watched than ignored. I lasted 18 hours. That's it. 18 hours before the silence drove me back. Before the weight of ordinary life crushed whatever resistance I had left. The drive back to Portland felt like coming home after years away, every mile closer. I could feel her pulse strengthening. My reflection in the rearview mirror began to shift, features sharpening, eyes brightening, like she was already reaching out, welcoming me back. My apartment building looked different in the morning light. Older, more alive. The Victorian architecture seemed to breathe, windows like eyes tracking my approach. Mrs. Patterson from 3B was checking her mail. She stared as I passed, mouth slightly open. "My God, dear," she breathed. "You look absolutely radiant. What's your secret?" I laughed, but it came out wrong. Musical, like autumn leaves. "Just a good night's sleep," I heard myself say. But that wasn't my voice. Not entirely. My apartment door was unlocked. I know I'd locked it when I fled, but it swung open at my touch. Everything looked exactly as I'd left it. Except the painting had moved. It no longer hung above my bed. Instead, it waited in the living room, propped against the wall facing the door, watching for my return. "I knew you'd come back." Her voice filled the space, warm as honey. "They always do." I dropped my keys. They clattered on the hardwood, the sound echoing strangely, like it came from very far away. 18 hours, she mused. "Longer than most. Harold only lasted 12. Mrs. Chen, 6. You have a stronger will. That will serve us well." "Serve you?" My voice cracked. "Serve us?" she corrected. "You're almost ready to understand. Come closer." I didn't want to, but my feet moved anyway. Each step felt like sinking into warm water. By the time I reached the painting, I was on my knees. This close, I could see details I'd missed before. The brush strokes weren't just paint. They were fingerprints, thousands of them, overlapping, creating texture and depth. And in each whirl and ridge, I saw faces, fragments of all the women who'd come before. "We're not prisoners," she explained patiently. "We're a collective, a sisterhood of the eternal. Each of us brings something unique. Vivian brought her knowledge of art. Margaret brought her eye for beauty. Chen's wife brought her patience. And you'll bring your words." "My words?" "This story you're writing, it's not a warning. It's an invitation. How many lonely souls will read it? How many will recognize themselves in your struggle? How many will come looking for me?" The truth of it made me sob. I wasn't documenting my doom. I was creating a lure. "That's why I chose you," she continued. "A writer, someone who could capture the exquisite pain of transformation, the seductive horror of belonging. Your story will bring me more sisters than I've collected in decades." No. But even as I protested, I kept typing, adding these very words. "Oh, yes," she laughed. "Even now, you can't stop, because deep down, you want them to come. You want others to share this beautiful curse. No one should be this special alone." She was right. Go, the painting that watches me sleep. The first time I noticed the eyes moving, I convinced myself it was just the wine. 3 glasses of Merlot after a particularly brutal day at the Portland office had me seeing things. But now, sitting here at 3:47 a.m., stone cold sober, I know the truth. The painting above my bed isn't just watching me. It's waiting for something. Before I tell you what happened last night, before I explain why I'm writing this from a motel room instead of my own apartment, I need you to understand something. Sometimes the most terrifying things come wrapped in beauty. Sometimes they arrive at garage sales for $25, with a sweet old lady's smile and a story about her late husband's art collection. And sometimes they follow you home. The story begins now, 6 weeks ago.
I was killing time at one of those neighborhood garage sales in Hawthorne District. You know the kind. Vintage records nobody wants, mismatched china, and that distinct smell of mothballs mixed with old paper. I wasn't looking for anything specific. Just enjoying a rare sunny Saturday morning in Portland with my coffee and nothing urgent on my schedule. That's when I saw it. The painting was propped against a dusty bookshelf, partially hidden behind a stack of National Geographic magazines from the 80s, even from across the driveway. Something about it pulled me in. It depicted a woman's face, rendered in oils with a technique that seemed both classical and somehow unsettlingly modern. Her skin had this luminous quality, like moonlight on water. But it was her eyes that stopped me cold. They were the deepest green I'd ever seen in a painting, with gold flecks that seemed to shift in the morning light. The artist had captured something in those eyes, a depth of emotion that made my chest tight. She wasn't quite smiling, wasn't quite frowning. Her expression held this perfect ambiguity that made you want to keep looking, trying to decode what she was feeling. Beautiful, isn't she? I jumped. The voice belonged to Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman running the sale. She'd approached so quietly I hadn't heard her. My husband bought that at an estate auction in Salem back in '92. She adjusted her glasses, studying the painting with me. Never did find out who painted it. No signature. Harold used to say she had knowing eyes. Knowing eyes? I asked, still transfixed by the portrait. Mrs. Chen smiled, but something flickered across her face. That's what he called them. Said she looked like she knew secrets. She paused. $25. If you're interested, I'm downsizing. Moving in with my daughter in California. Can't take everything. I pulled out my wallet without hesitation. As I handed her the cash, she gripped my wrist. Her fingers were surprisingly strong. Take good care of her, she said. Then, softer. She likes the dark. I laughed nervously, unsure how to respond to that. Mrs. Chen released my wrist and wrapped the painting in an old bedsheet. As I loaded it into my Subaru, I noticed her watching from the doorway. She didn't wave. Back at my apartment. I spent an hour deciding where to hang it. My place isn't huge, just a one-bedroom in a converted Victorian near Laurelhurst Park. The living room felt wrong somehow. Too public. I finally settled on the wall above my bed, where I could see it first thing in the morning and last thing at night, as I hammered in the nail. I could have sworn those green eyes tracked my movements. Just a trick of the light. I told myself, old paintings often had that effect. The eyes seeming to follow you around the room. It's all about the way the artist renders the perspective. That first night, I fell asleep faster than I had in months. The painting seemed to emit this soothing presence, like having someone watching over me. I dreamed of forests, deep and green, with golden sunlight filtering through endless canopies. The problems didn't start until the second week. It began with small things I could explain away. I'd wake up certain the woman's expression had shifted during the night. Her almost smile seemed wider some mornings, more knowing. Other days, her eyes appeared narrowed, as if she disapproved of something. I started taking photos on my phone before bed, comparing them in the morning. But the differences were so subtle. I couldn't be sure if they were real or just my imagination playing tricks. Then came the dreams. They started pleasantly enough. I'd find myself in an art gallery, wandering through endless rooms filled with portraits. The woman from my painting would be there, always just around the next corner, her green dress swishing as she disappeared through doorways. I'd follow, but never quite catch up. After a few nights, the dreams grew stranger.
The gallery walls would shift and breathe. The other portraits would turn their faces away as I passed. And always, I could hear her breathing, soft and steady, like someone sleeping beside me. I mentioned it to my coworker Derek during lunch at our usual food cart. "Dude, you look exhausted." He bit into his Korean BBQ burrito. "You getting enough sleep?" "Yeah, just weird dreams lately." "About what?" I hesitated. "How do you explain that you think a painting is giving you nightmares without sounding completely unhinged?" "Just stress. Probably." I changed the subject. "How's the Morrison project coming?" But the dreams were the least of it. 3 weeks after I'd hung the painting, I woke up at exactly 3:33 a.m. The room was darker than usual, even though I always leave the bathroom light on with the door cracked. As my eyes adjusted, I realized why. The painting was glowing. Not brightly, not obviously, just this faint luminescence, like foxfire or those deep-sea creatures that make their own light. The woman's skin seemed to pulse with it, a phosphorescent shimmer that made her look almost three-dimensional. I sat up, heart hammering, reached for my phone to record it, but the screen wouldn't turn on. Dead battery. Even though I'd charged it before bed. The glow lasted maybe 30 seconds, then faded like it had never been. I spent the rest of the night on the couch, telling myself I'd imagined it. Stress from work, too much caffeine, not enough exercise, all the usual suspects. But when I finally returned to my bedroom the next evening, something had changed. The woman's eyes were no longer looking straight ahead. They were looking down, directly at my pillow. I stood there for 10 minutes, studying the painting from every angle. Took a dozen photos, but no matter how I looked at it, those green eyes were focused on exactly where my head would be when I slept. That's when I noticed the first crack in my rationality. Instead of taking the painting down like any sensible person would, I moved my pillow 6 inches to the left. When I woke up the next morning, her eyes had followed. I should have gotten rid of it then. Donated it, sold it, thrown it in the dumpster behind my building. But something held me back. Maybe it was the way the morning light caught those gold flecks. Maybe it was the loneliness of my empty apartment, and how the painting made it feel less hollow. Or maybe, and this thought chilled me, maybe she didn't want to leave. The physical changes started the following week. I noticed it first in the bathroom mirror. My eyes, which had always been a mundane brown, seemed lighter, greener. I convinced myself it was the new LED bulbs I'd installed, but when Derek commented on it unprompted, I knew something was wrong. "New contacts?" he asked during our coffee break. "No. Why?" "Your eyes look different. Greener." He shrugged. "Looks good. Actually, makes you seem more, I don't know, intense?" That night, I compared selfies from the past month. The change was undeniable. My eyes were slowly shifting color, taking on the same green-gold hue as the woman in the painting. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that I was starting to like it. By the 5th week, I'd stopped fighting it. The painting had become part of my routine. I'd wake up, meet those green eyes, and feel a strange sense of connection, like reuniting with an old friend. I'd tell her about my day while I got ready for bed, share my frustrations about work, my worries about my mom's health back in Michigan, my dreams of maybe writing a novel someday. She never responded, of course. But her expression seemed to shift with my moods. Sympathetic when I was sad, encouraging when I felt defeated, proud when I landed the Henderson account. I knew how it sounded. Believe me, I knew. But living alone in a city where making real connections felt impossible,
Even that illusion of companionship was intoxicating. The physical changes accelerated. My hair, dishwater blonde since birth, began developing auburn undertones. My cheekbones seemed more pronounced. Even my hands looked different, fingers longer and more elegant. When my own mother didn't recognize me during our weekly video call, I finally admitted something was seriously wrong. "Honey, is that really you?" She squinted at her laptop screen. "You look different. Just better lighting in the apartment?" I lied. "No, it's more than that. You look like..." She paused, searching for words. "Like someone else wearing your face." I ended the call early, claiming connection issues. That night, I stood before the painting with a glass of wine, studying every detail. The woman's features had become as familiar as my own. More familiar, actually, since I'd started avoiding mirrors. "What are you doing to me?" I whispered. The painted lips seemed to curve slightly, almost amused. That's when I noticed something I'd missed before. In the background of the portrait, barely visible in the dark oils, were other faces, faint outlines of women, all with those same green-gold eyes, all with that same knowing expression. I dropped my wine glass. It shattered on the hardwood floor, but I barely noticed. I was counting the faces. 5, 10, 15. More emerging the longer I stared. My phone rang, making me jump. Unknown number. "Hello?" Breathing, soft and steady, familiar. "Who is this?" The breathing continued for another moment. Then the line went dead. I looked at the painting. The woman's chest seemed to rise and fall. That night, I didn't even try to sleep in my bedroom. But it didn't matter. The dreams found me anyway. This time, I wasn't in a gallery. I was in a house, old and Victorian, like the one I lived in, but wrong somehow. The walls breathed. The floorboards pulse with a heartbeat. And in every room, the same portrait hung, dozens of them, hundreds, all watching, all waiting. I woke to find myself standing in my bedroom, facing the painting. I had no memory of getting up, no memory of walking down the hall. My feet were dirty, and there were small cuts on my soles, as if I'd walked through broken glass. The wine glass I'd dropped earlier had been cleaned up. The floor was spotless. That's when I saw my reflection in the glass covering the painting. The woman looking back wasn't entirely me anymore. Last night was when everything fell apart, or came together. I'm still not sure which. The day started wrong. I woke up on my bathroom floor at 5 a.m. No memory of how I got there. My fingernails were caked with something dark, paint, maybe, or dirt. The medicine cabinet mirror was cracked in a spiderweb pattern, like someone had punched it. When I looked closer, I saw strands of auburn hair caught in the cracks. My hair, but longer than it should be. I called in sick to work. Derek texted twice, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. What would I say? That I thought a painting was stealing my identity? That I was becoming someone else? That I liked it? Instead, I spent the morning researching. I'd spent the day researching, digging through online archives, auction records, anything that might tell me more about the painting. Most trails led nowhere, but I found one thread, a newspaper article from 1987 about a series of missing women in Salem, all artists or art enthusiasts, all with distinctive green eyes. The article included a grainy photo of the lead detective on the case, Detective Harold Chen, Mrs. Chen's husband. My hands shook as I connected the dots. He'd bought the painting at an estate auction in Salem in '92, 5 years after the disappearances stopped. I called in sick to work and drove to Mrs. Chen's old house. The new owners hadn't heard from her since she'd moved. The forwarding address she'd left was fake. The daughter in California didn't exist. By the time I got home, the sun was setting. The apartment felt different, charged, like the air before a thunderstorm. I stood before the painting, fists clenched. "I know what you are," I said. "I know what you're doing." The woman's expression didn't change, but the air grew colder. "How many others?" I demanded. "How many women have you taken?" That's when she smiled. Not the painted smile, the real one. Her lips parted, and she spoke with a voice like autumn leaves. "Taken?" She laughed, a sound that made my bones ache. "Oh, sweet girl, I don't take anyone. They give themselves to me, just like you have." I stumbled backward. The room spun. "Every night, you've stared into my eyes," she continued. "Every morning, you've sought my approval. You've fed me your loneliness, your desires, your very self. And in return, I've given you beauty, purpose, connection." "No." But even as I protested, I knew she was right. I had given myself willingly. "Look at yourself," she commanded. I turned to the mirror on my closet door. The woman reflected there was stunning. Green eyes that held secrets, auburn hair that caught the light like fire. Features refined to an almost painful beauty, but it wasn't me. Not anymore. "We all came willingly," she said. "The artist who painted me, the women who owned me, even Harold, though he fought longer than most. We're all here, together, forever." I saw them then, in the mirror, dozens of faces superimposed over mine, all those missing women, all those vanished souls, all beautiful, all trapped. "Join us completely," the painting whispered. "You're so close already. Just one more night, one more sleep beneath my gaze." I ran, grabbed my keys, my wallet, nothing else, ran to my car and drove until I found this motel on the outskirts of Gresham. I've been here for 6 hours now, typing this on my phone, trying to make sense of it, trying to warn you. But here's the thing. Here's the part that terrifies me most. I miss her, even now, knowing what she is, knowing what she's done. I miss those green eyes. I miss the way she made me feel seen, important, beautiful. My reflection in the motel bathroom mirror is already fading, the green bleeding out of my eyes, the elegant features softening back to plainness. And it hurts. God, it hurts like withdrawal. I know I should stay away, drive to another state, never go back. But it's 3:47 a.m. now, and all I can think about is those eyes, watching the empty space above my bed, waiting for me to come home. I'm going to post this story, share it as a warning, or maybe as a confession. I don't know anymore. If you ever see a portrait of a woman with green gold eyes at a garage sale or thrift store, walk away. Don't let her beauty fool you. Don't let loneliness make you weak. But even as I type this, I know the truth. I'm going back. I have to. She's waiting for me. And the terrible thing is, the thing that should horrify you most, is that part of me can't wait to hang above someone else's bed, to watch them sleep, to offer them the same poisoned gift of beauty and belonging, to finally understand what it feels like from the other side of the paint. Are you still there? Reading this in your bed? Do you feel eyes on you now? That sensation of being watched in the dark? Check the walls around you. Check every painting, every photo, every reflection. Because sometimes the most dangerous art isn't in museums or galleries. Sometimes it's already in your home, waiting patiently for you to notice it, waiting for you to need it, waiting for you to fall asleep, sweet dreams.